I like what he does.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Eminem.
He's completely brilliant.
I said that a long time ago.
I think he's the first truly postmodern artist in that if you took away his context, like his producer, he's kind of like a fool. But when you put him with his producer and his corporate sponsorship, he's a genius.
I never considered myself anything more than an underground artist.
Slim Shady's your crazy, shady, hazy baby.
I really like him. I think he's a great writer.
His lyrics contain abusive, threatening and violent fantasies.
Eminem is a hardcore MC. He's supposed to be hardcore.
You're not gonna get birds and bees and flowers and trees.
I love all the controversy.
Maybe he was Skeletor and I was even.
You guys take your cameras and going back, okay? I appreciate it.
Like everybody has a shady side.
There's Marshall as a ninja.
I don't feel like I have to compromise my style for nobody.
He manages to make beautiful lyrics, literally.
Eminem scratched his ass today!
It does have a lot of talent in it.
In a few short years, Eminem has become one of the best-known artists on the planet. He has won numerous awards from MTV, the Grammys and the Brits. He has achieved #1 albums and singles across the world and already has enough gold and platinum discs to decorate the average rap star crib. All this while creating a wave of controversy over the lyrical content of his songs, being sued by his mother, paying frequent visits to court on gun charges, and getting married, splitting up, reuniting, and planning to divorce his high school sweetheart, Kim. It's been an eventful time for Marshall Mathers. The Eminem story started in the very unremarkable location of Kansas City, Missouri. At only 15, Debbie Nelson was a singer with a local band called Daddy Warbucks. In true rock and roll style, she fell for another band member, 22-year-old Marshall Mathers Jr. They married, and on the 17th of October 1972, Marshall Bruce Mathers III was born. Debbie was ecstatic, but it seems that young Marshall's dad was not so happy. And 6 months after his son was born, he went west to California and out of their lives forever. To this day, Eminem has never spoken to his father. Debbie and Marshall continued to live in Kansas City with relatives, including Debbie's half-brother, Ronnie Polkinghorne. Marshall and Ronnie were very close. Although Ronnie was in fact his uncle, they were a similar age and were more like brothers and best friends than uncle and nephew. Although Ronnie and Marshall seemed happy enough together, things must have been different for Debbie because she decided it was time to leave Missouri. Marshall and his mum relocated to Warren, Michigan, a suburb of the northern industrial centre of Detroit, the heartland of America's motor industry. Debbie's brother, Todd Nelson, was already there to lend a hand.
Right, when Marshall and Debbie first came to Michigan, which would have been 1976, she stayed here with him, and they had no one else to stay. My grandmother's house, this has been in the family since 1952, and she took them in and decided to give them a chance here in Michigan. There was nothing where they came from. In the state of Missouri, in St. Joe, the city, there's absolutely no factory, no production. It was a very, very tough place to live. And they had came here in search of a better life. And Debbie, I thought, did a very good job of finding him a better life. This was Debbie after she came to Michigan. She was transforming her image from the little country girl to the big city queen.
Life in Warren was hard. Marshall missed his closest friend Ronnie and became quiet and withdrawn. But that wasn't his only problem. A small, thin, quiet kid, he was being constantly bullied both at school and on the streets around where he lived. They were tough times for Marshall, who despite his later incarnation as Slim Shady, was not a kid who liked violence of any sort.
There's Marshall as a ninja, and he's about 8 years old there. He's in the kitchen of his mother's house over on Dresden. He never was tough. He was always a real nice kid, but he wanted to portray the image of being tough.
Uncle Todd and his young nephew took fishing trips together, but as Todd recalls, even fishing was too violent for Marshall.
The fishing trip we had one time when he was trying to put a worm on a hook, and he couldn't bring himself to pierce this worm through the hook. And he was saying, oh my God, you know, oh no, it's gonna hurt. It's gotta hurt this little thing. I can't do it. Oh no, you know, he dropped it. He said, I can't put this thing on there. You have anything else we can use? Oh God.
While Marshall was close to his mother, their relationship was often difficult. As a young single parent, she seemed to find it hard to cope and has been described as having wild mood swings. One minute she'd be attentive, the next withdrawn. Then the next she'd be in your face shouting and screaming. Later in her life, she'd be diagnosed as having mental health problems. Throughout this time, her brother Todd, Marshall's uncle, tried to help out both his sister and her young son.
He never really had anyone to protect him. And I protected the whole family. Whenever the sisters or anyone had problems, they would come to me. Hey, I need you. You know, whatever the problem was, I would solve it. And with him, I would go in the room and play Masters of the Universe. He loved Masters of the Universe. And he set all these little creatures up. And you know, oh, good God, you know, and I'd see him playing with these little toys. And I'd sit down and I'd be the bad guy, and he was always the good guy. He always wanted to play the good guy. He would play with his Masters of the Universe right here. The bed was this way. Skeletor, that's what I was. I played Skeletor. And it was so neat. You know, he really kept to himself. The door would be closed when he'd come over. And you'd open the door and there'd be Marshall. And he had all of his little toys set up. His castle and Grayskull always was right there in the middle. And he would have all his figurines set up. And this is where he lived when he lived in this house.
Marshall's problems with the local bullies reached crisis point in the winter of 1983. He'd been faking illness to stay away from school and avoid the kids who were making his life a misery. His mother seems to have been suffering from the mental illness Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Sufferers of this condition invent all sorts of medical symptoms allegedly affecting their perfectly healthy children. As a result, Marshall was failing at school, but it didn't stop the bullies on the days he did attend. D'Angelo Bailey was the school bully who really made Marshall's life hell. In the winter of '83, he beat Marshall so badly that he fell unconscious and continued to kick him while he was down, until eventually pulled off by a teacher. At first, Marshall just seemed dazed, but later at home he started bleeding from his ears and was rushed to hospital with a brain hemorrhage. Mathers spent the next 10 days in a coma, and doctors told his mother that he might not survive. Debbie sued the school but lost the case. She then decided to quit Detroit and return to the quieter life of Kansas City. In 1984, they both moved back to Missouri, where Ronnie and Marshall were reunited. By this time, Ronnie had become a huge fan of rap and the whole hip-hop culture of rhyming, graffiti and breakdancing. Maybe because he looked up to Ronnie, or maybe just because it was great music. His uncle's enthusiasm for hip-hop rubbed off on Marshall.
My Uncle Ronnie had simply brought me over a tape of the Breakin' soundtrack. Do you remember the movie Breakin'? It was a pretty big movie. It was about breakdancing, and what actually happened was he brought me over the tape, and we started listening to it, and he played me a song called Reckless by Ice-T. And then I liked the song, therefore I stole the tape from him and continuously, repeatedly throughout the day, played the tape and liked it so much that I learned the words by heart and then got into breakdancing at about age 12. I used to carry a little boombox radio with me on my shoulder like this and a piece of cardboard everywhere I went. And sometimes my Uncle Ronnie and I would go to playgrounds and we would throw the piece of cardboard down, simply set our radios down, play the loudest music we could, and we would simply breakdance. I got into rap when I realized that I couldn't breakdance.
Over the coming years, Marshall would return to Detroit to live, but the rap seed that had been planted by Uncle Ronnie stayed with him and became the focus of his life and ambition.
These are all tapes that I've got that I've I gave him back bags full of stuff that I found, and these are things that he doesn't want back. Evidently, he doesn't realize the quality or how much I have. This was the first tape that he ever made right here. It's a red one with my dead half-brother, Ronnie. Operator Cool Doggy. That tape has him and Ronnie on there attempting to rap, and it's really, really funny. They were about 9.5 to 10 years old when they made this tape.
Dreams of becoming a rapper were now centre stage in teenage Marshall's life, and he took every opportunity to show the world that they were more than just dreams. He wanted to show off his skills, and at Warren Lincoln High School he performed at a talent show with classmate Mike Ruby, who remembers that Mathers didn't stand out much apart from his rapping talent. Marshall wasn't only performing in school talent shows, he was also winning in the schoolyard battle rapping face-offs. These were competitive rapping sessions where kids would go head-to-head against each other. The first to get tongue-tied would lose out. Even then, Marshall's silver tongue and quick thinking meant that he was winning so often that it was hard to find challenges who would take him on.
I started realizing that I could put words together, that I was actually semi-good at it. And then maybe when I hit about 17, I started realizing that, like, a lot of the that I was writing was better than half of the rappers that were out, like, lyrically, like. So then I hooked up with these guys, the Bass Brothers, back in, I was about 17. And they had heard me rapping over the radio. There used to be this radio station I used to go to every Friday night called, it was like an open mic thing where you'd go up there and you play your demos.
Lisa Lisa is now a successful club DJ with a residency in the city's leading venue space. But back in the 90s, she was a hip-hop DJ on what was then Detroit's leading urban music station, WHYT.
Probably about 7 years ago or so, I was at another radio station, and I had a show that I developed called Open Mic Night. And what it basically was young wannabe rappers would audition on the telephone. So they'd call up and say, Lisa, I want to kick a rhyme for you. They'd do a little thing. If it sounded good, I'd schedule them, bring them down, and we actually took them into our production room and produced their song for them. It had to be original material. It couldn't cuss. It couldn't have any kind of obscenity or derogatory language in it. And they would get on the air and actually get their song on, that one song that they did for us here at the radio station.
Mark Bass, he heard me, I guess, coming home in his car or something, and called up the radio station and was like, who is that? And he was talking to us over the air. And he was like, why don't you guys come by? I'm a record producer, da-da-da-da. Come by, check it out. So we ended up hooking up with the Bass Brothers, and they had a connection at Elektra Records. So we got in there and we cut some songs better than demo songs. They were, you know, real, actual studio recordings. Well, what happened was Elektra turned us down.
Eminem's style and lyrics are the two talents most often listed as the reason for his success. They set him apart from other rappers in the mainstream, and although today it means that he is praised by some as a groundbreaking visionary, back in the 90s, this difference was seen as a problem.
When I was doing this program, the predominant form of rap was like the Ghetto Boys, My Mind's Playing Tricks on Me, and Black Sheep, and it was kind of the whole thing about storytelling was more on the gangster side, about, you know, Snoop Dogg was huge back then, and so his style didn't fit that genre. So me coming from a radio background, I didn't see him have radio hit written all over him, because his style was more comical, more storytelling, more kind of out there, like, what are you talking about? Where the other guys were a lot more commercial. They would talk about their girls and their guns and their crew and blah, blah, blah. So as far as his content, I didn't go, oh, wow, this guy's a genius. On the other hand, the fact that he was so different, he did have a whole different kind of rhythm to his rapping. That kind of allowed him to be a regular on the show. I had 4 regulars, he was one of them.
Me and Mark, we kind of went our separate ways. We still kept in touch a little bit, but we didn't really work together. You know, the project kind of fell through, so I was doing he was doing his thing, I was doing my thing. And then a few years later, 3, 4 years later, I started making a name for myself in Detroit, just at clubs and whatnot, just rapping and, you know, at open mics and freestyling and battles, competitions and things like that. And Mark heard about it. The Bass Brothers, they heard about, you know, what was going on again, and they decided to give it another shot. So we went with it, and we recorded the album Infinite.
Infinite was released in 1996 and featured 11 tracks by Eminem. It was the album which both the Bass Brothers and Mathers hoped would transform him from radio regular and local freestyler into a commercial success. With Eminem following advice on adopting radio-friendly lyrics and rapping about his life experience, the result was an album mostly about his daughter Hailey and happy family life.
There was maybe 500 copies of the album pressed up, and we just pressed them up locally to see if we could sell them, and they ended up not selling.
I think he was ahead of his time, to be honest with you. Now looking at the success he has, I think rap has come to a whole new life, I guess. It started off East Coast, West Coast, gang banging, fight, 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 girls are hoes and bitches. And now I think with guys like Eminem, it's come into a point where they're actually telling stories, and suburban kids are telling stories that are different from the street life that you would get in the inner city. And I think, so being ahead of his time, I think he was talking about that kind of stuff back then, but when we were playing 8 songs talking about, you know, the Snoop Dogg, the Dr. Dre, the Ghetto Boys, it wouldn't have fit back then. So I think he was kind of just ahead of his time, I guess.
With the failure of Infinite, things went badly downhill for Marshall. He struggled to keep his family together, but eviction from their home and lack of money meant that Kim took Hailey, left Marshall, and moved back to her parents' home.
I reached a point when my daughter was born where I didn't give a anymore. I didn't care. I just was like, I was fed up with so much shit. I knew I had a baby on the way that you know, before she was born and once she was born, I couldn't afford to buy her diapers. I couldn't afford to do anything. I lost my job. I was working different jobs, temporary service, all kinds of jobs just to try to make ends meet. Didn't have anything, you know, got evicted from the house I was staying at and really reached a point where I just hit rock bottom, so I stopped giving a fuck.
Sinking into depression, Marshall took an overdose of sleeping pills in December 1996. But he survived and with help emerged stronger than ever.
He was tired. He was being threatened and kicked around. He was white. He was going into mostly African-American venues where, you know, what are you doing here? What's he doing here? You ought to be playing rock and roll. What do you do? I rap. What do you rap? Presents? You know, he didn't fit. And it was starting to get to him. And his mother, being, you know, the pusher she is, she pushed him, hey, you're, oh no, get off that couch. You ain't giving up. No, put those pills down, kid. Get up. Come on, here, out the door.
Around the time of the birth of his daughter, Mathers was juggling fatherhood, rapping and various day jobs, trying to make ends meet for himself and his new family. One of his day jobs was as a cook at Gilbert's Lodge in St. Clair's Shores. The staff who worked with Marshall are proud to say that they knew him when he was just a cook and not an international star.
So we just figured he just went out to, you know, take another shot at something, and next thing you know, it's he's on, you know, MTV and on the radio and stuff like that, and we were all just, you know, kind of awestruck, you know, he finally did it, which is good for him.
His rise has been so fast that for some it seems unreal.
I still can't believe it. People, friends talk to me about it, you know, you knew them and you work with them. It's hard. Not very many people ever get to know somebody on that level.
Yes, very shocked. Yes, I didn't think he'd become so popular so quickly at all, especially because I know him and I worked with him, you know. It's kind of weird knowing somebody that's a big star now.
Mathers worked in this kitchen, turning out orders of fries, burgers and ribs for the lodge clients, although no one knows if he actually used to behave in the way he does in the video for the Real Slim Shady, where he spits into a customer's burger before handing it over.
I just thought he was a your everyday cook in a kitchen. We'd always bicker, and then we'd, you know, later on when the rush is over, we're like, oh, I'm sorry, and give each other a hug, you know, I'm not mad at you, and that went on a lot.
I've been in the business a long time, and a lot of cooks are very mean, and he was never like that. Always even keel, to be quite honest.
Busy Friday night, he'd get those orders out in a snap.
Just headphones on. When he got a little lighter, it wasn't so heavy working, he'd rap out the orders.
Mathers used every opportunity to improve his rhyming skills. Everything from rapping out the food orders in the kitchen to checking out the styles of other hot rappers.
We were constantly telling him, please turn down that radio. We're so tired of hearing that rap music.
Well, it was probably because he was so into it and you knew he was focused.
And then when he started rapping, because I'm not big on rap music, first time he rapped, I just turned and looked at him. I'm like, what are you doing?
He didn't quite expect that because he was quiet.
He may have come across as the mild-mannered Clark Kent of the kitchen, but he was focused, using the time to perfect his own rhymes.
He listened to his own music back there, and I didn't realize that until I actually listened to it. I realized it was him.
He'd listen to the music he had wrote earlier that day. Sometimes, like toward the end of the night, he'd ask us to listen to some of the music, ask our opinions on it.
He gave me one of his demos, so I have that and I listened to it, and I thought it was pretty good.
You didn't expect that kind of stuff to come out, and it wasn't as hardcore as what it is now on the albums.
The words in his music are not at all what he is.
With his dark side alter ego Slim Shady already making an appearance while he was working at Gilbert's Lodge, things really started happening for Eminem.
Then he kept telling me, you know, he was going to fly out to LA or New York, and he was gone a lot. He started being gone a lot at that point.
He really believed in himself. His friends believed in him. You don't expect somebody to become an overnight sensation.
But today, only a couple of years after grilling burgers, Eminem is now one of the hottest acts on the planet. And what do his former workmates think of his music now?
Now I like it. I have some of his CDs, and now I like it.
I listen to some of it. The kids next door, they play it all the time, all the time.
Eminem may have Grammys, MTV Awards and platinum discs on his wall, but to Sherry, he's still the same guy.
To me, he's still Marshall. It's just, he just has a lot more money now. And more tattoos.
Although he didn't know it at the time, the creation of his alter ego, the now famous Slim Shady, was the turning point for Eminem. With this new character, Eminem began to explore the dark side of his fantasies that had been festering since his days at school. It seems that he hadn't really explored the alter ego until things reached rock bottom after the failure of Infinite and his split with wife Kim. All the anger and frustration of the last 24 years found its voice through Slim Shady, and the raps that made up the Slim Shady EP changed everything for Marshall and the millions of people around the world who were about to become his fans.
We recorded the Slim Shady EP, and as soon as we recorded that, I was doing shows, getting little gigs around Detroit, in the Detroit area, little club gigs and things like that. And everything just started picking up. Like, you know, the tape started selling. There was a buzz. I would walk in the clubs. People would automatically know who I was. I started making like a pretty big name for myself, like locally.
While the EP had made Eminem an underground star, he still wasn't getting the respect he thought he deserved. Although critics considered that he was hot, Eminem had only gained a runners-up place at the annual Rap Olympics in LA. He was beginning to feel that despite his now recognised talent, it was never going to be possible for him to be taken seriously as a white boy in the world of rap.
We went out to LA and we started putting it in the stores, and I had been out there a few months before and took second place in a rap competition called the Rap Olympics. And I had gave my tape to this kid named Dean Geislinger, real young kid at the time. He was like 18. I gave it to him, and I was because I lost the battle. I took second place in the battle, and I really thought I should have took first. So he wanted the tape from me, so I kind of gave him a copy of the Slim Shady EP, thinking, yeah, whatever, you know, take the tape. I don't care who you are. I've been around by so many labels. And then come to find out, 2 months later, 3 months later, while we was out in L.A., all of a sudden we get a call from Jimmy Iovine and Dre himself saying, we want to meet with you. We like your tape. So I guess that's how it went down. Then I met him like a day, 2 days later. I met with him at the Interscope offices, and that's when I realized, like, this was actually happening.
The initial meeting with Dre was much better than Eminem could ever have imagined. After kicking around some ideas, Dre asked Eminem to stay in Los Angeles for another week so that they could spend some time in the studio together. Dre was so impressed with Eminem that he signed him up to his own Aftermath Records label. For Marshall, the chance to work with one of the biggest and most influential names in rap was something that didn't need consideration. Now, thanks to Slim Shady, Marshall Mathers was going somewhere.
The EP is what actually got me the deal with Dr. Dre. I don't know, it was just different. It seemed like on Infinite, I was rhyming big words, but I wasn't really expressing myself, and I wasn't really expressing how I felt. You know, I wasn't putting my life into my music.
Eminem had been talented enough to write material that connected, and now, purely by luck, he had hooked up with Dre after he had found the tape on the floor at the home of Interscope Records boss, Jimmy Iovine. But would things have been different if Dre hadn't picked up that tape and got behind Eminem? Would he still have become the worldwide phenomenon that he is today without the rap legend's backing?
I want to say yes, but knowing the music world like I do, I don't think it would have. I think his perseverance is what got him to the level to be successful or not. But I think his affiliation with Dr. Dre and that label, and as powerful as Dr. Dre is what allowed worldwide exposure of his music. You can only do so much as an individual in the music world. I mean, you need a huge distribution company, a huge group of promoters, or a big label for radio to stand up and say, oh my God, let's play this record. Especially if you're a Caucasian rapper talking about the kind of stuff he talks about. So I think he was influential in getting him worldwide exposure. I don't think he affected his style at all, and I don't think he affected getting him there. It's not like he found him somewhere in some small town. Eminem had busted his butt to get noticed by him.
Once in the studio, Dre put his magical production talents into operation. They worked together at a hectic rate and laid down some of the tracks that would later feature on the Slim Shady LP. Not only did Dre produce the album, but he also features on several tracks including Forget About Dre, Guilty Conscience, and the first single, My Name Is.
You know, I met Dr. Dre. He was cool. I got in the studio with him the same week. We did like 4 songs in 6 hours, something like that. And one of those songs was Hi, My Name Is. And there was just an instant chemistry there, I think, with me and Dre that I think he told me he hadn't seen since like Snoop Dogg, that as to where we were able to bang out songs just like, you know.
Despite the sudden excitement of his studio sessions with Dre and the taste of the glitzy LA lifestyle, he still found time to call Uncle Todd back home.
I knew that it would happen if he didn't give up. He had given up once, he quit. His mother pushed him back out to do it. But I had known from where I was at that he was going to do it. It was not like a vision, but it was something like just someone in the family will make it, and it's going to be him. I knew it. I knew it before he ever knew it. When he called me from LA and said, Uncle Todd, I made it. You wouldn't believe it. You told me all these stories about the hotels and the girls and all the publicity and everything, the stunts and the shoots, and it was great. I knew he would make it. I mean, there was no doubt in my mind.
The first single to be released from his collaboration with Dre was My Name Is. It became a huge hit across the world, and almost overnight, Eminem went from being an underground rapper to a full-on star. It's not what he'd expected.
I was surprised, yeah, when My Name Is blew up. I didn't know exactly what it was going to do. I mean, this was my first time, you know, actually doing this or whatever. It was my first time exposed to the public, and I never considered myself anything more than an underground artist. You know what I'm saying? Just because of the subject matters I talk about and the way that I rap or whatever, the things that I talk about, I thought, you know, I was surprised, to be honest.
The fact that My Name Is became a huge seller across the world may have been a surprise to mothers, but others thought it had mega hit written all over it.
Kids were going to love it. You knew that because, you know, here's this guy. He's talking dirty. He's saying things that you never think about saying.
The success of My Name Is was quickly followed by the equally massive Guilty Conscience and a chart-topping album. Each time Eminem was going further out there, pushing the boundaries, gaining more fans and upsetting others. There'd be no sellout to success.
I don't feel like I have to compromise my style for nobody. You know, just because MTV or BET might pick up on a video, you know what I'm saying, or whatever, you know, if my does have some type of mass appeal to it, then that's good, you know what I'm saying? It reaches a wider audience, but I don't try to compromise myself for nobody.
His attitude was accurately summed up with his next single, The Way I Am. Eminem was by now a phenomenon, saying things that other rappers didn't, in a way that was unique.
What separates him both from people around Detroit and from other rappers, his ability to adopt his voice to different characters, and as well as to create those characters, it's really much more of a whole package than you find in many rappers.
This multi-personality schizophrenic world of Slim Shady was starting to get complicated. Marshall Mathers, Eminem, or Slim Shady? Just who was making the music? With the Real Slim Shady, please let us know what was going on.
The concept of the whole song was, you know, trying to say that there's a Slim Shady in all of us. Everybody has a shady side to him. So in the video, I'm asking, will the Real Slim Shady please stand up? And everybody's standing up in the video because everybody's got a Slim Shady in them. I said that a long time ago when I came out with my first album. I feel like everybody has a shady side to them.
When Eminem created Slim Shady and began to explore his dark side alter ego in his lyrics, he really started to connect with people across the world. But the violence, rape and murder in his lyrics have outraged as many people as they have won over. His concerts have been the focus of protests by gay rights groups, claiming that he is homophobic, and women's groups have campaigned to get Eminem banned, alleging that his lyrics advocate violence against women. While Mathers claims that he's just telling it like it is, nobody would claim that what he says isn't controversial. The argument is just about whether he should be silenced for publicising extreme views.
It's not the music itself, it's the lyrics of the music. It's his misogyny and his homophobia, basically. The way he advocates killing gay people, the way he advocates raping women, etc. I just find it offensive.
Much of Eminem's fan base is made up of young, impressionable kids, mostly young men. This is the same demographic that accounts for the vast majority of hate crimes perpetuated against lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender people in this country every day.
Whatever campaign groups are saying, Eminem has managed to convince many of the world's top stars that he shouldn't be silenced, even if they don't agree with everything he's rapping.
I'm an artist, I'm an American, I completely support this man's right to say what he feels and wants to. How can me ever say you can't say that?
And it's very simple, he just wants, you know, like a lot of rappers, they want to, you know, be allowed like a playwright, like a screenwriter, the ability, you know, to not have to write in the first person, you know? It's like, you know, they're just writing stories and enacting them, you know? It's like medieval, it's like your very own British tradition, you know? Go back there, go back into, you know, the old murder ballads and stuff like that. You know, Johnny Cash shot a man in Reno just to see him die. People didn't go, Johnny Cash wants to shoot somebody, you know what I mean? Give us a break.
Slim has his own views on the controversies surrounding his music.
Regardless of how many units I sell, the subject matter and the topics that I rap about are still underground. You know what I'm saying? They're still raw. I don't try to, you know, polish up my for nobody. I don't, you know, I tell it like it is. And when you buy a Slim Shady album, you're going to get Slim Shady. You're not going to get birds and bees and flowers and trees.
When I listen to Eminem, I listen to Eminem with the same mindset that I do watching a movie. You know? It's almost saying, you know, it's almost watching a horror movie and saying, oh, it's too much violence, you know? It's a horror movie. Eminem is a hardcore MC. He's supposed to be hardcore.
Eminem's lyrics generate enormous passions among his fans and enemies, but there is the possibility that he's just trying to wind people up.
I think he's not being a role model. You take it literally if you want to take it literally. I think he's a performer. I think he's doing a lot of it for shock value. And even if he does feel anger against the gay community, doesn't like this community, doesn't like his mother, you can express that any way you want as long as you don't act it out. I don't think it's in him to act it out. I think he's expressing it, getting it off his chest, and I think half of it's tongue-in-cheek. I think half of it is just to get a rise out of people. And so he's probably sitting there laughing, going, yep, I'm getting it off. That's exactly what I wanted to do.
You listen to the stuff and you're just going, wow, okay, and each successive song takes you in some different, dark, unbelievably strange and dirty place. I think in Eminem's case, he is primarily an entertainer. He's a dark entertainer. He views himself as, and when I've interviewed him, what he does, he feels he does dark humor. You know, dark, sick type of humor.
Although his mother didn't find comical references to her and Marshall's songs a joke and launched a lawsuit against him, Uncle Todd says it made him laugh.
I think it's funny. I think it's hilarious to do more pills than your mom does and all that stuff, because the whole world's, you know, like Marilyn Manson said, we're all stars in a dope show. You know, I mean, everyone is. It's on something, whether it's alcohol, aspirin, caffeine, or cigarettes. And to make his mother, though, his little skinny, overprotective mother, you know, the center of all these bashing lyrics, it was just funny to me. It was hilarious.
He's very entertaining to listen to. Even his critics, even the people who lay into him the hardest, always acknowledge what a good rapper he is and what an interesting sounding rapper he is. And that's really very key to the appeal as well.
Eminem may be serious in the views he puts across. He may just be trying to provoke a reaction or even just having a laugh. But whatever the reason, what he has to say has connected with a whole new audience. Kids that were not necessarily into rap music before and didn't recognize the ghetto lifestyle identify with this new slacker hero from the suburbs.
I think a lot of the angst and a lot of the fear and a lot of the pain that he expresses in his lyrics, maybe not to the extreme that he takes them, you know, with the killings and the hating this segment of the community or that segment of the community, but all that's based in fear. And I think a lot of the young people today have that same thing inside them, especially suburban kids. I don't think they have the same form of expression as the inner city kids. And I think a lot of these feelings that they're having, Eminem is able to express, and they can relate to him because they look at him and they say, oh my God, he looks just like me. Or he looks just like the kid down the street.
The change from the lyrical style of the pre-Slim Shady days to the more recent violent and menacing raps did surprise some people who knew Mathers as an ordinary, quiet person. But even they point to his difficult and troubled life as the source of this anger.
I think it was just maybe a lot of deep down anger that he was just trying to get out. It's like his own therapy for himself, to get rid of things that had happened when he was a child or his life.
I can see where some of it comes from, with his mother, with Kim. I don't think it was easy a lot for him. Like I said, he maintained an even keel life on this level, and I'm sure the anger came out in his music, which is better than anger coming out in a lot of different ways with a lot of people.
Thanks to his Uncle Ronnie's influence, Eminem got into rap at an early age, and the acts he grew up listening to had a very real impact on his life. They offered more than just some catchy rhymes. They supplied an attitude, a whole new lifestyle that helped Marshall deal with the troubles in his own life.
I was going through a lot of at home. You know, me and my mother never got along, and it was really rough at home, and it was an outlet for me to, I was going through a period in school where I was failing in school. I hated school because I used to get picked on all the time. I was going through a period, that music right there alone, I think NWA's music made me reach a point where I didn't give up neither, and it helped me come out of my shell at school. It helped me for anybody who was picking on me to fight back. You know what I mean? I ended up standing up for myself, getting in a lot of fights in school, and you know, there was times I would get jumped in my neighborhood, but instead of running, I found myself fighting back a lot. And I think it was a lot of the influence was from their music. It was telling me, you know, don't take no.
Eminem may check Ice-T and NWA as important early rap influences, but Uncle Todd claims he was there first.
In the 1970s, we would go to parties and stand around drinking and shooting guns in the Midwest and have a big bonfire and beer and girls. And for some reason, I don't know, after so many beers, I would just start rhyming and making things go together and just rhyming. And the Sugar Hill Gang came out about that time. And my best friend, which was African-American, Ed Carey, he would say, hey, you know, you got to hear this, you know. And I was like, yeah, I do my own thing, you know. And that was, Sugar Hill Gang was great. But I rhymed too. So whenever I talked to Marshall, I would rhyme to him. I would literally just, you know, make it all go together. Like, hey, little dude, what's been happening? You know, I see your face and it's not frightening. And it just always, he kind of liked that. He'd smile and look at me and you know, it was like, Uncle Todd, how do you do that? You know, just start putting things together. But the young man has forgotten a lot of his past. He doesn't remember too much. You know, I think he's lost track of what's really important to him.
Virtually every rapper claims to have had a tough, troubled background of abuse, brushes with the law, guns and drive-bys, giving them the street cred that adds extra urban appeal, and Eminem is no exception to this rule. But according to Uncle Todd Nelson, the young Marshall Mathers' background was more sheltered than the publicity machine suggests.
He got into this field of music where I guess you had to come from a real bad lifestyle and neighborhood in order to make it. And so, yes, it turned him against everyone that would tell, you know, I mean, you know, how sheltered he was.
Growing up in Detroit makes you hard, and especially growing up in the areas of Detroit he did and the circumstances of his life that he did. And in Detroit, not only can you grow up hard, but you certainly fancy being hard. It's a city where, yeah, it's still a car city, and always will be a car city. It's a shot in a beer auto worker, Friday night fights kind of city, and whether it's romanticized or not, it makes an impact on any artist who's going to work out of here and decides they want to be Detroit. I mean, if you go back to John Lee Hooker, you can hear Detroit in John Lee Hooker in a big way, and you can certainly hear it in Eminem.
Eminem's relationship with his mother Debbie has always been a complex and turbulent one. Since Mathers' success, though, things have reached a whole new level. In his breakthrough single My Name Is, Eminem claims his mother used more drugs than him. Debbie was not pleased and she sued. After a series of courtroom wrangles, they reached an out-of-court settlement. It still seems, though, that despite the truce, the two have not reconciled. In the past, though, things were very different.
His relationship with his mother was always very close-knit. His mother was like a wasp watching over the nest. Okay? If you even looked at Marshall sideways in traffic or in a department store, and my sister would literally just verbally rip you apart. He was so overprotective. It was always him and his mother. And whenever Marshall wanted someone out of the picture, he told mother, and that was it. Mother threw me out. I don't know how many times. But Marshall had to have some correction in his life, too. There was no one there to correct him. And so whenever Debbie left the room, I would correct him. And then she'd hear some sounds, and come, what? Something happened to my kid? I don't know anything about it. He's fine. Look at him. And then she'd leave. Kid, let me tell you something. You know? He was a brat. Like if she had a boyfriend and Marshall didn't like him, that was it. I mean, all he had to do was go tell her, "Mommy, he gave me a dirty look." Just on those words alone, this man would have to pack his things and leave, even if the relationship was good and everything was fine between them. And I saw that as just, you know, kind of evil. You know, and in the back of his mind, he was sort of evil. Maybe he was Skeletor and I was evil. You know.
While his legal wrangles with his mum seem to be settled for now, since his high school days there has been another woman in Eminem's life, and that relationship has proved as tempestuous as the one with his mother.
But there he was when he got married to Kim. Him and Kim. I always call him and Kim. But that was in '99, and they were in Missouri. So you remember the old saying, a daughter's a daughter for life, a son's a son till he takes a wife.
So did Eminem's marriage to Kim pull him away from the family he had been so close to? Todd thinks it was inevitable.
We're very hot-headed. We don't have much to do with anyone in our families. We don't speak to our mothers that much. We don't speak to our fathers very much. We feel we are the father of the family, and we like to be the head of the household all the time. So we're not really close to anyone.
Despite his happiness over the birth of his daughter Hailey, the time with Kim has not been the picture of happy family life. Kim and Marshall have married, split up, got back together, then split again. Slim Shady has famously rapped about wife killing, and they both seem to wind each other up.
Well, Kim used to come in sometimes, bring his daughter in. Sometimes she would say he could have her, and he'd wait for like an hour till he got off of work, and then she'd change her mind on him and leave with the baby, and that really upset him a lot.
The conflicts with Kim became ever deeper and more complex when Eminem ended up in court after he pulled a gun and pistol whipped a guy he had caught kissing her in a Detroit bar. Eminem did not contest the charges but narrowly escaped jail and got off with probation. But the gun incident is just one of the couple's many ups and downs. Both have attempted suicide. Marshall took an overdose after the failure of Infinite, and more recently, on the 3rd of November 2000, Kim tried to slash her wrists, as this local news item shows.
Go ahead, 911. I need an ambulance.
The call came just before 11:30 Friday night to the Sterling Heights home of Marshall Mathers, better known as the rapper Eminem. The terrified caller is the mother of his wife, Kim Mathers.
What's going on? My daughter's trying to make sure if I can just come. Okay, where's she right now? Walk to the house, dripping blood.
The rapper at the time was performing at the Palace when his wife tried to take her life.
What has she got? What has she got? What does she have in her hand? Razor blade. She's got a razor blade in her hand. She's threatening to use it again. Ask her if she'll talk to me.
According to the police report, officers rushed into the home to find Kim Mathers bleeding and crying. She told them, and we quote, "There's got to be a better place than this."
Suicide has haunted Marshall before. On the 13th of December 1993, Eminem was told that his closest childhood friend Ronnie had committed suicide by shooting himself in the head. Detroit has a vibrant musical history. During the 60s, it was home to the hugely successful black music label Tamla Motown, a record company that produced artists like the Supremes, Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder. It is also the birthplace of blues legend John Lee Hooker, Queen of Soul Aretha Franklin, and garage music. But in recent years, Detroit has failed to produce any really significant music stars apart from perhaps Kid Rock, until Eminem. And when he exploded onto the scene, it was a big surprise to many locals.
You really, around Detroit, you really started to hear Eminem's music. When the rest of the world did, he was very much an underground phenomenon before the music started to be released. So all of a sudden, just before the first album came out and My Name Is came out, all of a sudden there's this rapper out of Detroit. Dr. Dre signed him. He's going to be the next hottest thing. Boom, there's a single. Boom, there's an album. And suddenly, you know, it was a very short rise to superstar for the average person in Detroit, really only if you were into the hip-hop underground. Did you have any sense that he was going on already?
Yeah, he has single-handedly, I think, put Detroit, in that market, at least rap music, on the map. And I think he's going to open up the door for, like, he's already brought on D12. And, yeah, I think he's made Detroit proud, even though Detroit may be like, oh, I wish he wasn't talking about that.
Definitely, we're totally taken aback by, Jesus, this guy going to go out this far, and each successive song, can he go out any further? And sure enough, yeah.
While they may have been surprised by the lyrics, Eminem's Detroit fans are justly proud of the way he has put their city on the rap map of the world. Mathers has also chosen to carry on living in his hometown rather than head off to celebrity-rich New York or the Hollywood Hills, and has also shot several of his videos in Detroit. However, some are critical of the way he has treated his fans and claim he doesn't pay enough attention to the ordinary people who made him a star.
The way he's treated his fans has been astronomically unfair. I mean, come on. I mean, the kids in the neighborhood he threw apples at, they went to school and told the principal was going to file a report with the police. He didn't. There's been lots of instances. We were at the State Theater. I mean, he was flipping them off, and they were just waving at him, and I couldn't believe just his attitude towards them. I mean, these are the people that put him where he is, and it was so, I don't know, I didn't quite understand that.
Eminem scratched his ass today. Lose at 11.
Star status has an inevitable impact on your life. The more people want to see you, get your autograph and shake your hand, the more difficult it is to go out in the street. So, the more minders, bodyguards and security men you acquire, who see it as their job to get between you and your fans.
No, you don't want to touch me. If you touch me, we will have a problem.
One aspect of celebrity that cannot be argued about is the amount of pressure it puts on those in the spotlight. The loss of privacy plus the number of old friends wanting to ride along the celebrity bandwagon can make life difficult.
As far as the pressure, yeah, I think there's immense pressure on him.
He seems to thrive off whatever you can throw at him. It gives him that much more juice. You know, get in a fight with Everlast, great, I'll make a song about it for my next album, or in this case, the D12 albums.
While Mathers may have found it easy to cope with the fallout from feuds with other rappers, the pressures from his admirers was harder to deal with. He claimed he was continually pestered by fans turning up at his old Sterling Heights house, asking for comments or autographs. Since his split with his wife Kim, Eminem has moved to a huge and luxurious new home. The new house is part of a gated community on an estate that features many electronic high-tech security features.
Hello? Hold on a second. I'll be right there, okay?
Sadly, though, it seems that increasing fame and fortune has meant that Marshall Mathers now even has to share his home with his bodyguard.
Okay,
no. A straightforward question. That's fine.
That's fine. Just don't.
Yeah, sure.
You guys take your cameras and go on back, okay? I appreciate it.
Okay, got it.
Okay, thanks.
Not everyone, though, thinks Eminem has become an unapproachable megastar. His old workmates at Gilbert's Lodge still get regular visits from their old cook, and despite the ever-present minder, he's as friendly as he ever was.
He's come in here a few times and just comes in, eats, and talks to all of us. Hi, how you doing? You know, how's your son? Stuff like that. He doesn't forget us.
One day I came in, or he was sitting here, and I walked up to him. He had a bodyguard at the table, gave him a hug, said, you know, hi, Marshall, I'm so proud of you. This is so wonderful, you know. He's like, thanks. And I go, well, how's it feel? You know, it's got to feel so different. And he says, well, it's a lot of work. I got a vacation coming up, and I can't wait. I got 2 to 3 weeks off, and nobody's going to tell me what to do. Nobody's going to tell me how to act. Nobody's going to tell me this, and I can do whatever I want, and I just can't wait, because I'm not used to this yet totally either.
The pressures that fame bring are something that Eminem is going to have to come to terms with, as after 2 years in the centre of the spotlight, his popularity shows no signs of dying down.
He's riding the absolute crest of a wave. He's probably one of the biggest stars in the world at the moment. 4 Grammy nominations, coming over to the Brits. Biggest hip-hop rap star, certainly, in the world at the moment. He'll be around for a while.
Whatever you may think of Marshall Mathers III, one thing is for sure. Both Dr. Dre and Eminem himself are very positive about the future.
And you know, it's been almost 2 years now. It's going on 2 years since me and Dre have been working together. So it's like, you know, we just got more comfortable like working with each other and whatever. And you know, Dre is starting to get more of a feel for what I like, you know, as far as beats and whatnot, you know.
What we're doing is working. We're pushing buttons.
We just get more comfortable working together, so the music is obviously going to come out better, you know, the more comfortable you get working with somebody.
I think his greatest challenge is finding ways to reinvent himself, finding ways to beat that rap, you know, 2-3 album life cycle. I think the D12 move is probably a very smart move on his behalf. It's a way to put out the next Eminem album without it being the next Eminem album, and it allows him to come back fresher in the public's mind.
Wait till the next record.